Yes, there's a little box in the corner that says all recorders are currently busy. We're working on freeing recording resources. Please try again in a few minutes.
Cool.
Sounds like something on their cloud is busy.
I'm
Yeah.
recording anyway, so
Did you already start?
yeah, I've started. Yeah.
Okay, awesome, cool, thanks. Well, hey everyone, thanks for joining the community call number 12. I posted a document, a Google Doc in the chat. Let me know if you can't see it. That's for taking notes. If anybody wants to make sure anything's written down or so, I'll also be in there and try to take notes. And there are a couple points in there that that came up that we can talk about today. Let me put that in my background here. So one of the first one was that Patricia Estevao, not Robinson, was kind enough to say that she'll give an update on what she's working on, which is a research, Bitcoin user research. So I'm super excited about that one. Then the second topic was Pavlinex. I think you just wanted to give a quick shout out about an small illustration project for the Lightning Development Kit. And then we can give an update on the design guide progress. But kind of my silent hope here is that we can talk a lot about research and have a good conversation about everything that Patricia's doing. Patricia, would you like to kick us off?
Yes, of course.
Awesome, thank you.
I don't think I have anything that is worth like sharing a screen, but I think it's enough for me just to tell you a little bit about how I've been planning the research, and of course I'll be happy to hear any thoughts you have. Since I'm hoping that this will be a good resource to feed the guide afterwards. So keep that in mind. That's why I want a lot of feedback. So what I've been doing that I've launched right now was a call for participants for asking people to apply to the interviews. My goal here is it's like I've seen a lot of good quantitative research up to this point, like a lot of surveys that have very good results. So what I'm trying to do here is actually fill the other gap. So I'm going for more qualitative and, of course, a smaller scale research. It's not going to reflect like statistically large parts of the population, but it's gonna give a much more humane and personal perspective of how people use Bitcoin. And what I did was in the call for participants, I shared the process that is expected. I mean, how people should apply, what are the steps they should expect. And I also made an effort to make them feel comfortable with what kind of information would be requested for them to share, because it is different from a survey. It is something much more personal, as I said. So it is requested a bit more of personal to like set expectations here in this call for participants, say things that I won't ask, for them to feel more comfortable, to say the things that are expected to be published, which are not the raw data or the raw recording of the interviews. It's just gonna be published as insights and in a way that is not really connected to anyone who is actually being interviewed. And let me see what else I wanted to say. One of the things that I thought about is, since I'm going to do since it's like less people who will be interviewed, I wanted to have a bit more control over the profiles of the people, like to guarantee that I get a more varied profile. So like I didn't want to have like 30 people just from the US and things like this. So that's why I created the screening questionnaire. And there I asked just very, very basic background questions to have an idea of who is the person that I'm talking to. And then I can try to sort out like multiple profiles. I was also thinking, I spent some time thinking how I could do this, if I should use a more private service or anything like this. But in the end, what I decided was to use like Google Forms to make it user-friendly for anyone who wants, but also give another option for the person to send me a file, to send me a TXT with all their answers, so they wouldn't need to use Google if they didn't want to. In terms of the profiles that I'm getting, I'm happy because I'm getting profiles from multiple countries. I'm just not happy enough because I wanted to have it reach more people. I'm still gonna think how I can work with that. I mean, I know I'm putting limitations of language, but those are languages that can still go a long way. For example, there are multiple countries in Africa who speak Portuguese and English. I know I'm not putting French in the game, which I know would also help, but the reason for that is that, well, to be honest, I'm not sure how comfortable I am with using an interpreter for the interview. I'm afraid of how it can affect the interview itself. Like if the user will be less comfortable having a third person in the conversation, and I won't be able to control how the questions are asked. It's not ruled out. If I think that I should try it out, I'll still do, but I want to try first with languages that I can do it myself. So at the moment, trying to reach out for more people in general, but particularly for different countries in Africa and Asia, which are, I got different countries from Europe, which is good because they all have very unique realities as well, but I wanted to go a bit further.
How many responses have you gotten already?
About 50.
Okay, nice.
And let me see. So, okay, and a little bit of what I'm going to do afterwards. I'm going to start, I think very soon, I'm gonna start scheduling the interviews. I just wanted to confirm something. And my idea is to give them at least enough space between the interviews so that if I find that something's not working properly, then I can iterate a bit on that. If I find that I should ask something else, or anything, so I can give myself the time to improve between interviews if needed. And of course, after I get enough insights, I guess, something that I feel that I'm satisfied, I'll start working on a form of a report or something like this. And yes, so I'm gonna start scheduling, even if I'm still looking for participants, if that matters.
I was about to ask that if it's a rolling process where you can adjust as you learn, or if it's kind of a one-off.
Yeah, so
you answered that one.
Since we have some kind of leeway with the grant, and so I think I can start with what I have, so I don't get behind too much, but I'll still put more people in.
What would you say kind of? Oh.
No, go ahead.
Sorry, Christoph. What would you say kind of your more like granular research goal is?
Yes, so I have like the general research questions that I want answered, which are basically what motivated people to use Bitcoin, like what was the customer problem that led them to use it. and how it is that they use, I mean, what happens. But I can give you a few examples of things that I intend to ask, if that helps.
Yeah, would love to hear.
So, for example, I want to ask about their social context surrounding Bitcoin, like what if they feel there is a community, if their friends use Bitcoin, anything, if their country forbids the use of Bitcoin, how they were exposed to it in the first place, what is their personal use case, how they feel when they use Bitcoin. This is if they feel comfortable, if it's something that is hard, if they have any difficulties that they usually have, how much they understand the technology, and if that matters at all, if they think about security, if they have like an OPSEC process, something, and if they are active Bitcoiners in some sense, if they are actively involved with it, or if they just use it quietly. So these are some of the things that I want to ask.
Awesome. And then I did look through kind of like the screening questionnaire, and I noticed that there wasn't questions kind of that go more into detail about demographics. Do you think you're going to collect that data when you do finally interview them? Or do you feel like you want to more preserve that like anonymous participant profile?
Yeah, I mean, I spent some time thinking about what kind of information was really important for this. So, and I'd love to hear if you think there is anything that I should collect. But for example, I don't think I should ask like what's the person gender. I think this matters. But what matters for me is which country they use Bitcoin. So that's a demographic data that matters. I don't think if there is anything else that's very specific that should matter, since it's Bitcoin, it's supposed to be global.
I would like push, I guess it kind of depends on what your research goals are, but, and also like what you are interested in, but I would push back a little bit. Like if every one of your participants is a male, like of a certain age, I feel like it is worth knowing that to kind of question like, why is that? Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's also dependent on kind of what your research goals are and things like that. But
yeah, that makes sense actually. And I mean, I might ask if the person is willing to share, you know, how they feel.
Can I jump in for a second?
Yes, of course.
Sorry. Yes. Okay. First of all, I love this and you're killing it. And thank you for the update because I've been so curious. No and yeah, I'm just like, every time you talk more about it, it gets me more excited to learn more. So this has been great. I do think the gender aspect matters, but I also think like one thing that's really surprised me when I go to Bitcoin meetups in places that aren't the US is like, there's a ton of just like super white expat people. And they're like, yeah, I just sold my company from in the Bay Area. Like, oh, you know, Mountain View. I used to work at Google. I'm like, okay, so basically like a rich person who got into shrooms and like now you're just backpacking in like Latin America. This is like the thing now. So like, I don't know. So like no judgment. That sounds great. But like, I don't know if that's actually a reflection of like the people who live there or like, I mean, they are using Bitcoin. Like they're going there and like participating in the economy. It's not like they're not using it. It's just like, I don't know if like a rich white person from the Bay Area is like really what I would be interested in learning about, research about. Like, I feel like I know enough. I just go on Twitter and I'm like, I understand your entire life. Like you put it all on blast. So yeah, I don't know. I guess it depends. Like, I'm kind of curious, like how you kind of filter that out to be like, how is this useful to people who aren't already like super well off or aren't just kind of like living their best life, you know, like doing drugs and like using Bitcoin. I don't know, like doing drugs and using Bitcoin sounds great, but it doesn't sound to me like it would help us move forward.
Yeah, so we can't rule out that even these people are legitimate users. So, but to go to I think to a point that you made, especially about if a rich person is just backpacking in South America, do they represent the people in South America? Of course not. And I hope that I will be able to filter that, because in my screening questionnaire, I specifically asked if the person has a residency in the country. So, I mean, I'm not asking where they are right now, and it's usually different. It's usually a place where they are forced to interact with the community, with the local social context. So even, and I mean, I know that's not ideal, but even if it is just a rich person having fun in South America, if they live there, if they actually interact with that social context, I think they can already give some useful insights. But it is a fact that, I mean, we have to account for that. Not every interview will be perfect. There are even interviews, I mean, it never happened to me, but there are even cases where, I mean, the interviewee decides that he's not willing to share and just gives awful answers. So, I mean, we have to deal with that and just like move on to the next one. And
I'm just imagining you like reading the responses and being like, these answers suck, and like having to move on to the next one. But it's true, like nothing's perfect. So I'm just curious to see how you do this, and I appreciate like learning more. So thank you.
I was also going to say, as a screener question, something which might be quite useful. You obviously mentioned residency. A lot of expats in countries gain residency. What could be like an even further screener would be maybe to ask if or to try and find out what the average net worth of a sort of a citizen in the country is, and see if they're above or below that line. That might rule out some expats who have citizenships in certain countries who are like well above the sort of average income line or net worth line. I don't necessarily know how you'd find out that data, but I sort of mentioned it before when, we tried to do a bit of work in places like Colombia, and just got a pretty similar response in terms of there are a lot of people who were below that line who clearly could have benefited from a lot of services, but weren't in a position to be able to take a financial risk. I think that would be a really interesting cross section of your research, is figuring out like what is pushing people over that line of, okay, this is a risk, but like I now need to take this risk. The most people that I've met from around the world who use Bitcoin either can afford to have that risk, which seems like the category you don't really want to look for too much, or at least some of your research. The other category is the type of people who I've met in Venezuela and Caracas and all these places who need it. So they had an external motive which actually then pushed them beyond that line of, this is no longer just a question of a financial risk, this is a question of like a life risk or a savings risk. And if I don't do the opposite, and I think that's, for me at least as an observer, I think that's the motivation which seems to get a lot of people from these places into Bitcoin. It could be something quite cool to explore, but hey, I'm just a rich white guy on drugs.
No, yeah, but I think it does make sense, especially what you said in the beginning. The problem for me is that I'm not sure how much people would be willing to tell me their average net worth. I mean, it's something, I don't know. It sounds like something quite personal, especially to ask a Bitcoiner, like someone who might be a little bit too paranoid. So that's why I'm being like very, very careful with what kind of information I'm actually asking.
Hey,
you could ask. Sorry, Shaki.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Perhaps you can, in order to figure that out, it'd be more about asking, were you born here, or did you move here? And that'll be part of the conversation. I'm sure some people will be able to tell you why they're there, or kind of what their life is a little bit like, without being too intrusive.
Yes.
Maybe that information will pop up in there.
Yes.
I do wish, like Patricia and Maggie said, that you'd consider gender in this, because I know that not a lot of women are in Bitcoin, and it'd be interesting to see what they think or how they feel about Bitcoin compared to men, to see if there's any differences or any insights that you can gain from there. And is there anything in particular that you're hoping that from gathering this information, how that may help the community?
First, thank you. I think that asking where people are born is actually helpful. And also, I'm gonna add I think enough people are telling me, and it might make sense really to add at least some kind of gender information there. I'm not sure if I'm gonna add to the screening at this point, but at least I'll ask during the interview. I can add to the screening, but yeah, okay, I figured that out. And finally, to your last question, my hope is that we can get a more human idea of who are the people who are using Bitcoin. Like, we can actually get a story of how how Bitcoin is affecting, like impacting a person's life. And my hope is that this can help us build better products and more humane products with it.
Shoki, I think you had a question.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Patricia, it's great to meet you. Yeah, so I was wondering if you can, like, if the people are using Bitcoin, like if you said to send to their parents, or they hire from their foreign country that does not have a good banking infrastructure, if you can go like about how easy it was to onboard them and what like issues was with onboarding people like to Bitcoin.
Yes. Yes, the international remittances is actually it's something that I hope I find in the interviews, and that is sure something good to ask. I'm gonna notice this year. Ask about other people's onboarding.
I think one of the questions that we kind of like all ask each other is like, like how did you get into Bitcoin? But maybe that's kind of like obvious for the interview script and stuff. But like hearing the story of like how and why someone got it in the first place in that process is kind of linked to the onboarding stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean, the question of how they were exposed in the first place is already on my list, because, I mean, it's not just a curiosity. It actually helps us understand a bit more of that social context that I talked about. I mean, if this is something that everyone in the university talks about, if it's something that this person happened to have a friend who showed them Bitcoin. So it is an important question that I'm listing here.
There's a community member, Joe the Miner from Venezuela. He's not so active right now, but he's a miner, told you. And he has some really interesting stories. And I don't know if you saw it, he was sharing some like videos and stuff in the community about like how people are using Bitcoin and whatnot. And he's mining Bitcoin because it's better than any other job in the country, right? So, and he was very eager to help like conduct some research and get those stories out. So that could be a good underground resource for you, perhaps.
Yes, that's awesome. It's Joe the Miner?
Joe the Miner, yeah. You can message him. I could connect you to. He hasn't been active for a little bit though.
He was only active for a short period of time, but he was a bundle of energy there.
Yeah, I think it was a bit like a lot. for yourself, but because everyone was doing like these other things, and so yeah.
It's great though.
There was a raise of hands.
Oh yeah, I was also just going to ask, in terms of getting this interview process, as Christoph sort of mentioned, it's like an ongoing process of getting people in, doing interviews, carrying them on, carrying that recruitment process. Are you asking people to like refer a friend? So for example, if you find someone in Venezuela who gives you some really great insights, are you then going to use that contact to find 5 more contacts? And if that is the case, is there a way that maybe we can, or like you can mitigate for, I don't know if bias is the right word, but I've done some interviews in places where you get someone to refer a friend because you want more people from that country or that region, and then they just sort of say they get their best friend in because they know that there's some sort of like reward, and then they just sort of they answer your questions pretty much the same as the last person. So sometimes it's more useful to have like a step of sort of removal between interviewees. Don't know if that makes sense.
So I think that's a good idea, but I wasn't really thinking about asking for refer a friend, particularly because since I'm not gonna be doing like 200 interviews. So if I can manage to get very varied profiles, I might not even do more than one per country. So I don't know if the refer a friend will be needed, but if I feel that I want to learn more about a country, I might think of that. But again, I don't know how it would mitigate this, because as you said, at least the person, even if they are completely well-intentioned, they are likely to be in the same social context, so we might not get a lot of variety there. That's something to think about.
I have two surrounding topics. One of them is how can we help you? How can we, like, we're all in different countries, we're in different places, we have different skills and interests and connections and whatnot. What can we do to make your project better and easier for you?
Yes, so the thing that I could ask the most is if you know of any channels where sharing this call of participant would make sense. Please share or just tell me what is the channel and I'll go there and I'll share, because I don't know much like local channels, local communities, and I think that sometimes can help a lot in terms of reaching people. So any ideas that you have that could help me reach more people, I love them.
If you said earlier that you're not totally comfortable with a translator, what if it's somebody from this community helping you with a language, where it's somebody you may not know closely, but there's mutual interest and background.
But yeah, if it is at least someone who understands about Bitcoin, then yes, I think that would work fine, because my fear would be because I would either have to have an interpreter or to just hire someone and not even be interviewed in the interview. So I wouldn't know how the conversation would be going on. But if it is someone who knows Bitcoin, then I can trust that this person can pass on the same message that I want to. So this would also help if people are interested.
That'd be cool. If you have any countries that you really want to do, but somehow you don't have somebody, maybe you could or let us know. Maybe we know somebody or one of us can help.
Yeah.
Can you tell us which languages you're already comfortable with, so that whoever would like to help could add to that?
Yeah, I can only work with English, Portuguese, and Spanish. So even though there are many countries who actually speak those languages, it doesn't go a long way in Asia, for example. And I think that here in Europe, English is usually enough. Even if I want to interview someone in Germany, I don't think that should be a problem. But yeah, in the case of African countries, I think it would help me to have the French.
Okay, John, it's time to learn French.
Je ne sais pas.
I took French in school for 5 years.
I can read French, but not talk.
So Bitcoin,
Was it BitPaint that's from France? There's somebody that's from France.
Yes, he is. Yes,
I think BitPaint.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had another question here, and I'll pull up something here in my background. So you said that you want to focus on people stories, and my larger topic is around how can we make this research as useful as possible for the design community and designers and Bitcoin product creators in the end. So one, just throwing out a couple things here. We have a user research section in the guide, which I wrote, which you could probably add a ton to it and make it a lot better. But maybe, we can add some information in here. I'm gathering existing Bitcoin user research that's out there. And I think it would be cool at some point to create a page dedicated to just research resources. Maybe, we can introduce some of the stories that you come up with into different pages. So let's say, I don't know, what do you call it? Remittance. Let's say we have something in the guide that talks about remittance, and we can have a story from your research. And then I keep going back to sites like this one here, the Humans of New York, where, it just creates really lively portraits of people. And it makes them much more human, where it's not just a number or statistic, or it's like, 43-year-old male in Africa or so, but it's, you see them as people, and when you can think much more about, what would be helpful for them. And then I also started thinking about this. I keep going back to this one. It's a user journey depiction through illustrations. So if you can't do photos, we could try to, tell people stories through simple illustrations, maybe that capture some of the key moments or the key use cases or so. So I was just thinking, trying to come up with ideas about how we can make this as useful as possible. And I was just curious what you think, Patricia, and maybe what everybody else thinks. And this is probably also stuff where some of us might be able to help in different ways.
Yes, I'm writing stuff just because I loved at least some of the ideas. So I'm not a very good drawer, but I really love the idea of using drawings to represent a parts of the story, because of course I'm not even gonna have a picture of the person that I'm interviewing, and so thinking here, yeah. So one of the things that I think would be a good idea was what you mentioned, that I could map the insights that I have to specific parts of the guide. For example, as you said, if something regards the transaction, the moment of sending a transaction, then I can add some insight there in the context. So I think that's one approach. But I also want to really try to create maybe user stories, maybe personas, something more fundamental that can also fit in the guide, but maybe not necessarily mixed with the other sessions.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's just these are a couple of options. And I mean, anyone can we can polish these ideas when later on. I mean, this doesn't need to be completely defined, but I'll definitely make anything that I have as a result public, and I'll help connect it with the guide the best I can.
That would be super cool. I think, Ed, your work with Bet Money is also I was just thinking that you have some case studies, and I think one thing that you did was you added information about the country, culture, and some other things too, right? So it just outside of the individual story, it provides a bit of context of what this country is like and how big it is, and for people who might not be so familiar with it. Is that right?
Yeah. So we basically added a lot of cultural context to the sort of the personas and user types that we're coming up with, or the interviews that we're doing, which I guess provided a decent amount of background information, which also then helped us. I mean, first of all, it helps designers who are designing for specific countries, communities. They might need to know, for example, what are the legal restrictions on KYC in sub-Saharan African countries or something like that. So it provides like a cultural context for designers, but then it also provides a context in terms of a background which you can relay those personas on top of. Because, for example, and again, a lot of this stuff should be sort of ruled out within good screener questionnaires, which you seem to be doing. But let's say you do speak to one person in a country and it's actually unrepresentative of that community. You'll get a better idea if it's unrepresentative if you have a decent context of actually the culture with that community, the community that person is within. So we kind of did that with sort of we provided a bunch of financial data for some of the countries that we were sort of interviewing people from, so the Caribbean or Rwanda and places like this. I also mentioned and I think Christoph did as well, like what could a lot of this research be used for? It seems like a lot of it could be used for the building blocks for some really solid like a catalog of personas or archetypes for the community to be able to pick out from. The one thought I did have is that these things should probably be somewhat evolving. The average Bitcoin user or archetype of, let's say you have a few different archetypes of Bitcoin users a few years ago or 10 years ago, is probably wildly different to what it is today. I'm sure a lot of it is still similar, but making sure that, if this is obviously a design guide and people are picking from components or whatever it is, or information in the same way that you would with finding out how payments work or private key management, to have those things evolve with the space as well would be super useful. I'm not sure if anyone is actually working on a set of like personas for the design guide, but I mean, it seems to be something which this research could be used as like the bedrock for. So that might be worth thinking about.
I'm kind of curious there if over time the users change, but if the fundamental need stays the same, like the core reason why they start using Bitcoin, if that also changes, or if that is a constant or more or less constant.
I can only guess, but I think that with new profiles going to Bitcoin, it's likely that the reasons why they use it are also different. Like how many people got into Bitcoin because the value increased. So, I mean, this is actually a legitimate reason why many people are in the Bitcoin space nowadays, just because of speculation. Other people, I mean, I think of people who were at the very beginning are much more likely to have got involved in Bitcoin for more political reasons, or ideological reasons. That that not necessarily needs to be the case in a moment where we have practical solutions that use Bitcoin. So, I think that when we add more people, the reasons might change actually.
And I think Connor and Jones and I talked about that recently. The people get in it because the value increases. that doesn't necessarily point to greed. It could also point to, you know, the economic situation, the background or so. So I'm curious what the, like, it's easy to assign that, oh, people just want to make money, but there might be a lot more nuance in there behind that reason.
Yeah, it can actually be about trust, because I mean, seeing the value increase, we'll think that this is something that's more trustworthy. Yes.
Or the
Cool. Well, I'm
opposite.
really excited about it.
Sometimes the price tag could make it seem like not the sort of thing to get into, because you don't realize kind of the principles behind it. So it can bring more awareness and people may join it, but they may not. There may also be a group of people who don't, because they see that. And they may feel that it's not kind of a secure thing, but that it's something that fluctuates too much. And that is not really, you know, that is not really the case. It fluctuates, yes, but there's principles behind it. And, you know, I'm going back, I think it's something that Ed was saying. I don't remember if it was Ed, but anyway, you know, it would be interesting to look at people through the years. And I know that this is just starting, but to see how that feeling changes over time, and how we change, and how the technology changes, and how our experience improves or not.
Does anybody know if Mick has rolled out his survey that he's working on? He was gathering information on a survey about the perception of Bitcoin. Here's the Google Doc.
I think he did leave a message in general some weeks ago saying that he'd got, I think at the time it was around 50 participants or so, and he was just wanting to get more exposure to it, just to get more data before any analysis. So yeah, it'd be nice to get an update from him actually.
I think he was struggling. He was struggling to get his kind of like target participant. That's the last I heard from him.
Now, I wonder if we should be thinking more about the Bitcoin communities that may be around the world, and kind of adding those things to the guide, like seeing what's out there and what groups of people are out there, because I'm sure that if there's research needed, then we already have the channels, like Patricia was mentioning, that she needs the channels, and if Mick needs the channels, then maybe there's a way to start connecting with them, with different communities across the globe, so that whenever there's research needed, we can share the message a little faster. And
that's a good point actually. That's a good point. I just think automatically about the Bitcoin beach, for example, in El Salvador. If we had a direct link to someone in that community, I'm sure they'd be more than happy to partake in a quick survey or something like that. And that's proper on the ground Bitcoin in action type of stuff, circular economy type of stuff. So that would be quite cool.
Yeah, I guess that's also it goes back to one of the earlier things you just talked about, circular Bitcoin economy. You know, there's the difference between an individual is using it for one purpose versus a whole community, a city, a country. Well, it has gone to that tipping point where it has become a widely used form of store value or method of payment. I'm curious if there are any dynamics.
Yeah, I've actually spoken to the Bitcoin Beach guy. He's quite interested in having such kind of research and stuff now, but the issue is that I don't think he's there at the moment. So you would have to get in connection with like somebody like on the team there, who's gonna. But they are quite interested in it.
Hey, we have about 7 minutes left here for the full hour. We can talk as long as we want to, as always. But I wanted to ask if with the last few minutes, is there anything anybody want to talk about? Anything urgently? Any topics you wanted to bring up? Questions you wanted to ask? Now's the time to drill. Patricia, ask her questions.
No, I mean, I made a lot of notes from what you guys said, but yeah, I'm here for any questions. I just wanted to basically just thank you all for the feedback.
Well, thank you for presenting all your work. I thought it was super good conversation too.
Thank you for doing the research and finding out these people's stories. I think it will be quite interesting to see the results.
Yeah, I just typed in the group. I literally just typed in Bitcoin Venezuela. The first group that came up had like 1,700 members or something. So just to iterate what Alexa said, there are probably hundreds of thousands of groups and communities on all sorts of different social media platforms which talk about this stuff. It might be really useful to, I know we want to use Slack as like the main central place for designers, but for actually like reaching different communities, we might need to do a bit of digging into different social media platforms, Reddit, Twitter, all these sorts of things. So that was a really good idea, Alexa.
Yeah, I've also found these social media, Telegram, all these things, super valuable resources for just staying in touch and seeing when people talk about a product, what problems they have. I mean, and it's so easy to do that type of basic research, but it does give you a connection point. Cool. If we're all good with that topic, then let's hop on to this other thing. Pavlinix, you there? Quick shout out.
Yep, I'm here.
Awesome. So you wanted to bring up the fact that LDK is looking for illustrations for the homepage, right?
Yes, but I will like redirect this to Patricia, my Russian compatriot, so she will be able to tell you more about it because she's the one now leading on this one. Basically, we are creating branding and the logo for the LDK project, and from there we'll probably do some website redesign and so on, but like for starters it's just branding. So maybe Patricia can tell you more, but we're still in like baby phase figuring stuff out.
I mean, we're very baby phase. It's been like 2 messages in, to be honest. So if anybody wants to help out, like the more the merrier. Yeah, Pav just set up like a sort of message between me and Steve and a few folks, Val. So we're just trying to figure it out. If anybody has any ideas for illustrations, I mean, it's all on GitHub. It's pretty basic what they have so far. I think it's pretty open. Isn't that right?
What's the website called or domain?
I will paste it in the chat.
Okay.
I really feel like it's just like ldkdevkit.org or something. We like linked it in one of the, sorry, I have my like RoboVac going. I had to turn it off. It was like getting it was a whole thing. Yeah, so I think is it ldkdevkit.org?
Yeah.
Lightningdevkit.org, yeah.
Lightningdevkit.org.
Lightning, yeah.
And I think it's like, from what I understand from GitHub, Steve has sort of like this basic template from like, I don't know, it looks like you can just throw up a website, and seems like they're wanting more custom stuff. So far, it's just like 3 illustrations. But from the chat we've had, I think they want to do something a bit more detailed for like BDK. So this is just pretty basic. I don't know what the timeline is yet. I get the feeling it's the next couple of weeks. So if you guys have any ideas or want to like jump on a call and do something together, like I would love for more people to get involved.
Yeah, I'm still down to help Patricia.
Like
I sent you a message actually. We can loop you in too. Are you in LDK already? We can get you into that message.
No, I didn't. You had sent me a DM about it last week, though.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we should. Anyone else is interested too? I guess we can post it again. Maybe we can do like a Jitsi jam session and get some just like really quick, fun illustrations out. If that sounds good to you guys.
Awesome. And are you only talking in a Slack thread right now, or is there a GitHub discussion or an issue or something?
No, I mean it's very like baby phase. Like
Okay.
there is there's like nothing. Yeah, we're just trying to figure out what's going on. I ask questions that were more specific around like branding, like size, file type, unknown yet. I have the feeling if we just like make stuff, they'll like pick it and like see if it's good or not. So I think part of it is just like trying to get together sometime this week with whoever wants to be involved and decide what we feel is a good fit. Maybe we can just get a couple different options going and then people can just choose the ones they like best. It doesn't seem that serious. I think it'd be kind of fun to like have some wine and just like get some illustrations out. If anybody else wants to.
Yeah. Sounds
Caramelize
good.
some onions. That's what I'm currently doing, guys. I had the Robovac going and now there's some onions. So I got time. I got a lot of time if you want to do some illustrations later.
Yeah. There's
The mushroom
crocodile.
dance guy.
That's it.
Is there a button for the crocodile?
What was that,
No.
Alexis?
Sorry, I just had a question on the crocodile. I just logged into the website and I
Yeah,
wonder
it's
if
imported demo content. So they basically just launched the website, added a few sentences, and it's like all illustrations and dinosaurs. Everything is completely demo content.
It's totally a default template. It's a
Yeah.
service. I figured out what the service was. Looking Docusaurus.io.
It's kind of cute, but I kind of agree that like more custom features should be necessary. I feel like sometimes you like get something really technical and robust, and you're like, really, you just put up a template? Like I feel like we could do a little bit better than that.
Yeah,
So I
but-
think it'd be fun.
Yeah, so we should probably start with branding and logo because they don't have logo, they don't have colors, nothing. Logo is basically like Square Crypto logo, just says LDK, and they don't want that. They want to distinguish themselves. It's not like just for Square Crypto. So we should start with that, and based on those colors, probably, make some illustrations. But I agree, like having a few prototypes and just fun things people can vote on would be really good.
Yeah, and even like some of Christoph's icons from earlier, I just think it would be cool to sort of like not educate people, but I honestly don't think if people were in these meetings, they would really know what was going on. I don't even know what's going on. I'm in these meetings. I'm caramelizing onions, you guys. So I feel like if we just like kind of have these reoccurring things where we share info with people who aren't normally in the design community, it could be really good because it might open their eyes to what we're doing as well. So yeah, I mean, whether it's icons or illustrations or type settings or whatever, I just think it'd be fun to like get a couple of meetings out this week for anyone interested to just like jam.
Couple meetings this week. It's Wednesday right now.
It's